Picture this, you just started a new job or a new hobby and you feel completely out of place. You've prepared for this, but it's the first time you're having to ride the metaphorical bicycle without any training wheels. And it's scary. This is when the feeling starts to kick in and the thoughts start to fill your head. Should I even be here? Is everyone going to think I'm a fraud? Am I even good enough? If you have had this feeling or belief that you are not as good or as competent as the people around you may think that you are, despite your achievements saying otherwise, or that your successes are just down to luck, or that at some point people are going to just figure out that you're a fraud, then my friend, you've dealt with imposter syndrome. And honestly, if you're watching this video, then chances are that you have, because a survey that was carried out showed that at least 70% of people either have dealt with it or will deal with it at some point in their life. Research that was done by Pauline Clance and Susan Imes in 1978, when the term was first coined, actually found this to be quite prevalent amongst high achieving women. But nowadays, you can find it amongst both men and women. But it's particularly common amongst high achievers, tech professionals, medics, academics, perfectionists, and minority groups. And I think this makes a lot of sense because a lot of the amazing people close to me seem to have dealt with imposter syndrome at one point or another. And if you're watching this video, then chances are you fall into one of those categories and you may have dealt with it as well. And I'll be honest, I haven't personally dealt with imposter syndrome. But this isn't because I think I'm always perfect for the job. I just assume that it's normal to suck at things when you start. I am very self-critical and I have thought I wasn't good at my job or as good as I would want to be. But I just assume that that's part of the process of starting anything. There are going to be certain things that I'll be good at and other things I'm going to need to improve. And I think that having this mindset has saved me from a lot of suffering, because this is coming from someone that has failed twice to get into medical school, has failed like exams and interviews on this journey to becoming a doctor. But here I am. And this just made me think, what if more people were to give themselves that same grace? And that's where this guy comes in. His name is Donald Winnicott, and he was a pediatrician and psychoanalyst who came up with the concept of the good enough mother back in the 1950s. This is a concept that I think can help people who are dealing with imposter syndrome to reframe their experience and begin to silence and dissolve that fear that comes along with having imposter syndrome. He developed this idea during a time when experts and theories made the ordinary parent feel inadequate. Winnicott's idea defended the ordinary mother or father against intrusive professional advice that put a lot of pressure on parents to be perfect. He emphasized that the foundation of health are laid down by the ordinary mother in her ordinary loving care of her baby, not by any kind of flawless technique. In other words, a normally devoted parent was good enough to raise a well-adjusted child. I found this concept so interesting, especially in a time like now where it seems like everyone tries to portray themselves as being experts in their fields or being at the pinnacle of their career. At least that's what we seem to be exposed to. And there seems to be this hyper-productivity push, especially on social media. It can be easy to feel less in ourselves and to feel not good enough in our day-to-day endeavors. And similarly to the pressure that was placed on the primary caregivers back in the 50s, I feel like there's also this pressure on people to be perfect, this subliminal messaging on social media where people just have this perfect aesthetic or the perfect morning routine or whatever it is. And I think when that is being pushed onto a group of people who are already prone to perfectionism, it's really difficult for them to not feel inadequate when they are trying to engage on a new endeavor. So, what's the solution? We'll be using Winnicott's concept of the good enough mother to tackle two of what Clance and Imes believes were the strongest predictors for developing imposter syndrome, which were perfectionism and an inability to internalize success. So on the point of perfectionism, Winnicott believed that the best type of parent wasn't a flawless one, but a human one. someone who shows up, makes mistakes, and keeps trying. And that's what builds resilience in children. Not perfection, but presence and consistency. In fact, he argued that perfection was actually detrimental to the development of a child. It creates this unrealistic expectation of the world and stunts independence, and can go on to create a dysfunctional self. So what if we were to apply Winnicott's idea to our work? Similar to Winnicott, I proposed the idea of the good enough blank. So the good enough tech professional, the good enough creative, the good enough entrepreneur, the good enough doctor, the good enough feeling, whatever it is that you want to put in there that correlates with your situation. The idea that you can be good enough at what you do, and that's what's going to bring about a healthy relationship between you and your craft or your work. It doesn't need you to be perfect, it just needs you to be present and consistent. So rather than a doctor making a mistake and thinking that they are unqualified and a terrible physician, the good enough reframe of that is to understand that all physicians can miss things sometimes, but you show up prepared, willing to learn, and you apologize when you're wrong, and that makes you trustworthy. Or another example would be a programmer who thinks that if their code gets shipped with some kind of bug, then that means they are a fraud. The good enough reframe of that is to understand that all codes ship with a bug, and your value comes from writing, testing, and iterating, and your ability and desire to find solutions to the problems that you're faced with. And I'll be honest, it's difficult to not beat yourself up when you're starting something new and you feel like you suck at it, but you're really not hurting anyone else but yourself. Like I said, while I haven't had imposter syndrome, I've sucked at many things. Take YouTube, for example. When I first started, I was extremely terrible on the camera, but over the years of doing it multiple times, I think now I'm not so terrible. And you can go back and look at some of the older videos to make a comparison. But that's just what happens with doing anything for long enough. You are going to develop the skills and you will inevitably improve. So shifting your focus towards the type of person it is that you want to be in this particular role that you're in, whether that's at work or a hobby, whatever. Shifting your focus on that and thinking about the amount of reps and the skill sets and the skill points that you need to acquire in order to get to the level that you would be happy with is going to serve you far more than constantly being gripped by the fear of people around you thinking you're a fraud or that you're not as competent as they think that you are. So if you learn to love the journey of acquiring competence as you go along, you let go of the perfectionism trap, and it will be difficult for you to see yourself as an imposter because you'll be able to acknowledge your starting point and be able to recognize your growth, or more so your growth potential. So we tackled the first strongest predictor for developing imposter syndrome, which was perfectionism. So the next one, which is the inability to internalize success, is only going to take about 1 minute. But I think high achievers and perfectionists and ambitious people find it very difficult to internalize success or be able to even acknowledge and recognize their successes as they go along. They just keep thinking about the next thing that they're going on to. So here's what I want you to do. For just 3 weeks, I want you to create a Word document, Google Keep, Apple Notes, whatever it is, get a journal, a physical one, whatever is your preferred means of documenting things. I want you to take that, call it like your achievement journal. And at the end of every week, I just want you to write down the things that you were successful at throughout the week. It can be something small, it can be something big, whatever it is. But write down your achievements and your successes throughout the week. And ideally, you should do this for more than 3 weeks, but it's good enough to start at 3 weeks. And if you find it beneficial, you can keep on going. But what this does is it's going to start rewiring your brain to take note of your successes and your achievements. And slowly over time, it will be difficult for you to feel like a fraud because you will be able to take note of the things that you've actually done. And it's not going to feel like you don't have any achievements or you haven't really done anything and people are just kind of saying whatever, you will be able to acknowledge it yourself. So remember, similarly to how a child who's been raised by the perfect caregiver would not be able to develop a healthy relationship with the world, you trying to be perfect with your work is going to be detrimental to you developing a healthy relationship with it. You don't need to be perfect. Give yourself some grace, and see you next time.